The search had lasted 3 days, and by the 4th morning, even the rescue teams had stopped believing she was alive. Helicopters had searched the mountains, dogs had followed her scent until it disappeared among the rocks, and hundreds of volunteers had combed through miles of wilderness. The missing woman was Victoria Hale, a billionaire whose name appeared on magazine covers around the world. Her disappearance had become national news. But at 5:17 a.m., when the first pale light touched the mountain peaks, a single father named Daniel Reed heard something that everyone else had missed, a faint, desperate tapping coming from beneath a collapsed wall of stone. Daniel had never been a hero. He was a 38-year-old single father who worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table for his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. He had joined the search because Lily had seen Victoria's photograph on television and asked him what would happen if nobody came looking for her anymore. Daniel had looked at his daughter and remembered something his own late wife used to say: a person's worth was never measured by the size of their bank account, but by the number of people willing to stand beside them when they had nothing left. So Daniel promised Lily he would help. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of humanity, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Humanity Tales. Your support helps us bring more stories of courage and compassion to you. That 4th morning, Daniel had been assigned to search a narrow section of the mountain that most volunteers had already abandoned. The weather had turned bitterly cold overnight. His boots were soaked, his hands were numb, and exhaustion pulled at every muscle in his body. Still, something inside him refused to turn back. He remembered Lily waiting at home, probably staring at the television and hoping her father would return with good news. As Daniel climbed over a ridge, the wind suddenly became strangely quiet. He stopped and listened. At first, there was nothing but the sound of his own breathing. Then he heard it again. Tap. 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 He dropped to his knees. The sound was coming from beneath a massive slab of rock. Daniel cleared away loose stones with his bare hands until his fingers began to bleed. After nearly 20 minutes, he uncovered a small opening. Inside the darkness, he saw a pale face. Victoria was alive. She was barely conscious, trapped beneath the remains of a collapsed rocky shelter. Her leg was badly injured, her clothes were torn, and her lips were blue from the cold. She had survived for nearly 4 days with almost no food and only a small amount of water. Daniel immediately called for help, but the mountain had terrible reception. His radio was damaged, and his phone showed no signal. For a moment, fear washed over him. He could wait for rescuers, but Victoria might not survive another hour. So Daniel did the only thing he could think of. He crawled into the narrow space and began removing stones one by one. Victoria could barely speak. She kept slipping in and out of consciousness, but Daniel kept talking to her, telling her that she wasn't alone anymore. He gave her small sips from his emergency water supply and wrapped his jacket around her shoulders. Then he noticed the rocks above them shifting. The mountain was becoming unstable. Daniel knew he had seconds to make a choice. If he pulled Victoria out too quickly, the stones could crush her. If he waited, the entire shelter could collapse. He remembered something from his construction job about supporting damaged structures. Using a broken branch, climbing rope, and pieces of metal from his backpack, he created a crude support brace beneath the largest rock. Then he slowly widened the opening. When the first rescue helicopter finally appeared in the distance, Daniel was exhausted beyond words. But he refused to leave Victoria behind. The rescuers reached them minutes later. They carefully lifted the rocks and pulled Victoria free. As they carried her toward the helicopter, she reached for Daniel's hand. She wanted to thank him, but she was too weak to speak. Daniel simply squeezed her fingers. At the hospital, doctors said Victoria had survived because someone had found her when he did. Another few hours in that cold mountain shelter could have ended differently. The story quickly spread across the country. Reporters wanted to interview Daniel. News channels called him a hero. But Daniel avoided the cameras. When asked why he had risked his life for a billionaire he had never met, he gave a simple answer. He said he had a daughter waiting at home, and he wanted Lily to grow up believing that people still showed up for one another. 3 days later, Daniel received an unexpected visit. Victoria arrived at his small apartment with a cane in one hand and a folder in the other. She had learned about Daniel's life, his daughter, his 2 jobs, and the financial struggles he had quietly endured since his wife's death. She also discovered that Daniel had been saving every spare dollar to give Lily a better future. Victoria didn't offer him charity. Instead, she offered him an opportunity. She funded a new outdoor safety organization dedicated to helping lost hikers and families in dangerous wilderness areas, and she asked Daniel to become its field safety director. The position came with a stable salary, health insurance, and enough flexibility for him to spend evenings with Lily. Daniel almost refused because he didn't want anyone to think he had saved Victoria for money. Victoria told him that she wasn't paying him for saving her life. She was giving him the chance to build the life he had spent years putting aside for everyone else. That night, Daniel returned home and found Lily asleep on the couch. He sat beside her, gently brushed the hair from her forehead, and smiled through tears. For the first time in years, he wasn't wondering how he would survive the next month. He was wondering what kind of future he could finally give his daughter. Months later, Daniel and Lily visited the mountain where Victoria had nearly died. At sunrise, the peaks turned golden, and Daniel stood quietly while Lily held his hand. He realized something that morning. The world had called Victoria a billionaire, but on that mountain, money had meant nothing. Fame had meant nothing. All that mattered was one human being refusing to give up on another. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in humanity, and subscribe to Humanity Tales. Sometimes one small act of kindness can become the turning point in another person's life. And before you go, leave a comment saying, "I would never give up," if you believe every life is worth fighting for. Because sometimes, hope doesn't arrive with a helicopter, a rescue team, or $1 million fortune. Sometimes, hope arrives at dawn. Wearing muddy boots, carrying a bottle of water, and refusing to walk away.